Welcome to our Before You Listen episode of the 10 Talent Life podcast. My name is Alan Irving, and in the studio with me today and throughout the season is my wife, Nicole, and my son, Nicholas. Thank you both for being here. Glad to have you doing this with me.
Yeah, we're super excited.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, the purpose of this podcast is specifically to allow people who are unfamiliar with us to understand a little bit about who we are, what the 10 Talent Life podcast is all about, and why we care, why that's important to us. So that's what we really want to accomplish. This is just to be kind of a short intro into what to expect. All right. So what I want to start with is that the reason I've asked both of you to be part of this podcast is that a big focus of this podcast series is building strong multi-generational families. So the three of us represent obviously two generations of our family.
Yeah.
But collectively, we also have experience across 5 generations of our family.
Mm-hmm.
So Nicholas, you have children.
Right.
And so that's the grandchildren's generation.
It's true.
And you spent a lot of time and remember your great-grandparents.
I know.
And so that's
That is
a very unusual experience. And so, so we have lessons that we can learn from my grandparents, your great-grandparents, from our parents, and then all the way down to considering your children.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to have that multi-generational perspective as we go through this. So that's really what we're wanting to do. What I'll start with is I want to begin by just giving a little bit of background on who I am and where this came from. I'm really the initiator of this idea, which has really been initiated from everything that I've learned from my clients throughout the years.
Right.
So let me just start professionally who I am. I'm the founder of Irving Financial Group, and I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of families over the last 20 plus years as they have prepared for retirement and tried to ascend this enormous mountain called preparing for retirement, and then transitioned into retirement, and then now are even saying, not only how do we interact with our family while we're living in retirement, not just relationally, but financially, that's what we advise in. And then also, what does it look like to actually transition money?
Yeah.
Right. While we're living and after death. And so I've had an opportunity to work with my early clients through all of those stages.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And I've just observed and learned so many things through that. And so that has led us to understand how important these things are, and also understand what a gap there is from our industry professionally in preparing people for that.
Right.
Huge gap.
And so Nicholas has been with the firm now for a few years, and so he's had an opportunity to be able to see that as well. So that's who I am professionally. Personally, I'm going to let you talk a lot about the family. So personally, I'm a husband and I'm a father, and I have, maybe because I've had an opportunity to observe my grandparents and my parents do a lot of things well, I have been thinking about this for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So my perspective and my objectives of trying to do this well are not new.
No.
But my time in life is new. So my time in life now is the point in which I engaged clients 20 some years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? As they were
in
in that last stretch before retirement and then trying to make plans for that. So it's very interesting that I've been able to advise and help families through that. But now I'm saying, wow, if I really looked at what are all the best lessons that I've learned over the last 20 plus years, how would I actually apply that in our own life? And so that's where we are. And that's what's really made this a very interesting time is that there's all those different facets that are coming into it.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about me. And before I kind of kick it over to the two of you to introduce yourselves, I wanted to take a moment and just explain why this is called the 10 Talent Life. So the 10 Talent Life podcast is named after the parable of the talents from the Bible. So what listeners will experience throughout this podcast is that we're going to talk about faith because it's just the grid in which we see the world. And a lot of what we've learned from our clients is that this intersection of faith, family, and finances, when it's done well, really creates the strongest outcomes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so listeners will hear that.
Yep.
And so starting with the title of the podcast. So the title of the podcast, after the parable of the talents, in summary, the parable of the talents is a story, a parable that Jesus told about a master who called three of his servants to him and gave each of them some talents. And a talent was just simply a measurement of money. So it says he gave each of them according to their ability, which means he already knew a little bit something about their strengths and their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And so to one of the servants, he gave one talent, and a talent was a substantial amount of money. But to one, he gave one talent. To one, he gave two.
Mhm.
And to the third, he gave five.
Mhm.
He went away for an indeterminate amount of time and then came back and called each of them back to him to give an account for what they had done with what he had given them. And so the first one that came in was the one that he gave five. And so the one that he gave five came back and said, Master, here's the 5 talents you gave me, and here's 5 more because I put them to work, I invested them, and I had made 5 more. And so here's 10 talents. And so the master said, well done, good and faithful servant. Because you've been faithful in a little, I'm going to put you in charge over much, right? So then he calls a second servant into him, the one that he gave 2 talents to. And that one said, here's the 2 you gave me, and here's 2 more. Same thing. I put them to work, and I made 2 more talents. The master replied exactly the same way. Well done, good and faithful servant. Because you've been faithful in a little, I'm going to give you charge over much. And then the third came in, and that was the one that he gave 1 talent to. And he said, Master, because I know you're a hard master, and because you reap where you don't sow, I was fearful, and I buried the talent that you gave me so I wouldn't lose it, and then dug it up, and here's the 1 talent that you gave me. And the master called him a wicked and lazy servant, took what he had and gave it to the one with 10. So what we learned from that is that there's an expectation that we do with what we have. So we each have different abilities. So each he gave according to their abilities. And so I think there's an expectation that based upon the abilities or the resources that we have, we are responsible to not bury them out of fear,
right,
and to do something meaningful with it. And there's also the implication of multiplication, right? That not just to do something with them, but for the purpose of trying to grow it.
Right.
So the 10 Talent Life was coined as the title for this podcast because we, as the generation that's leading the future generations of our family, are saying, okay, how do we try to ensure we're not burying our talents? How do we try to ensure that we make the most of it? And how do we try to do that in a matter of multiplication?
right.
So that's how the podcast was named, and that's the story behind that.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. We're challenging cultural assumptions. We're challenging ourselves to not coast or bury or be fearful and to be wise. And so that's what we want to have conversations about throughout this podcast.
Great.
All right. So with that, that's a little bit about me, a little bit about what the podcast is going to be about and why it's named that. And so let me start with you. So I told a little bit about what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So why don't you tell a little bit about what you've been doing for the last 20 years?
All right. Well, I am Nicole. Alan and I have been married for almost 29 years, and we have 16 children. So I have been busy at home raising a family, and we've been homeschooling throughout those years. And so that's kept me more than busy right at home. The oldest is Nicholas at 26, and then down to 6 years old, Miriam. And so we have 10 sons and 6 daughters. And now we have some marrieds, adult children that are married, and 6 grandchildren. So we've kind of moved into a new season in some ways with adult children and grandchildren, but we are still actively parenting, young and middle and teenage children as well. We still have 9 children at home. So we kind of have the span of children and ages and development. But this is a new territory for us as we look ahead to what the next season might look like for us and our, children stepping out into the adult world.
It's been kind of like Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It just has been a continuation of it. And then although we're done having children, now there's grandchildren in the mix, which is interesting. You and I have had some conversations about just what it means to parent adult children because that's newer for us. And again, my role has been largely financial, but your role has been relationship and foundational development within the children, educationally, spiritually, and everything. So when we start to talk about having these conversations about the 10 talent life, and now that you have perspective, not only of raising and developing young children, but now you're even playing a very important role in our family regarding mentoring and discipleship of moms and wives and so forth. And then once we add money to this mix, again, that's not your lane, hasn't been money. You've carried all these other things. But when we start having these conversations about the 10 talent life and money becomes part of that, do you even care? Like, does that part even matter to you, or are you just mostly interested and excited about the relational part?
Well, you're right. I mean, I think the relational part's what I've always been a part of and what I can get excited about. But yeah, I think I'm excited about the opportunity to be able to work with our adult children, not only relationally, but maybe through business, maybe through common ministry opportunities, but to look at our adult children and say, if they'll have us, would we be able to do life together? And I think that's something that excites me, maybe something I didn't realize as a younger mom, because you're just trying to get through those years, right? And then they graduate and they get married and then they have children, and then you start to see an opportunity there that makes you excited, that says, my role isn't over, maybe far from it. And is it possible that maybe looking at this next season for us, there's an opportunity to invite our adult children into that through business, ministry, family, and collectively learn, encourage, and grow together in discipleship.
Right.
That's exciting.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. And then let me kick it over to you, Nick. So we won't have you go through your last 20 years.
I think those are just covered.
Yeah, exactly. But give just the listeners a little bit of context on where you are now. Like what your life looks like right now, kind of what your current grid is. Just start there. Give kind of a short summary of what that looks like.
Yeah. So starting my career and, in the early stages of getting a life in adulthood going. So I'm 26 and I'm the oldest of the 16 children. And so I'm married and I have 4 children of my own. And so I'm looking forward at the remainder of my life. And I'm starting to wonder, as you peek into adulthood, you start to consider time in a much longer stage than you did as a child. When you're 15, you can't wait to be 16. When you're 16, you can't wait to be 18. You're not thinking long term. As I'm having children, as I'm getting married, as I'm beginning to kind of to move into my career in a longer stride, I'm starting to look further out. So you start to ask yourself the question, what am I going to do with my life? And what is that all going to mean? What am I hopefully going to accomplish? And that can be a lot of different things. But I'm excited to be part of this conversation because I get to kind of look a little further ahead than I am. And that can inform where I'm going. So it allows me to ask the question, am I going somewhere? Am I happy with where that is? And I have plenty of time to change it. So I'm hoping that this conversation will allow me to get the context and the information I would need to inform whether or not I want or need to change any of my trajectories. So it's exciting to me because of the opportunity it presents. Not everybody gets that.
Right.
In this conversation, but even in the conversations we have with clients, I get to see people who, are often wonderful, godly people that have done wonderful things in business and in family, and the opportunity to learn from them and to look ahead and say, I might like it if my life looked like that in 50 years. That can be very informative to what I should do now. And so for me, that's wonderful. And I'm excited to be part of this conversation, even just for that.
So has the opportunity to sit with just several of these families that we've been working with over the last few years, as well as having children yourself. I would guess that has enormously expanded your perspective, your context, and your vision. Is that true?
Absolutely, it has. So when you have children, you think even further because you're thinking beyond your own lifetime into theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that we talk about that you can't even understand until you have kids. I'm sure everyone could relate to this, but before you have children, you kind of look around at different people that have kids or that have parented, and you go, "I'll never do that," or "I'll definitely do that." And you have all these things.
You
that
know
you
everything, right?
Exactly,
Before
you think
have
you
children,
do.
right?
You know so little that you think you know everything,
Right?
And then you have kids, and you go, "Oh, that's why they did that
Right.
way." And there's things like that in these conversations and in the conversations with clients that we've had. I would not have been able to understand if I didn't have children, because I would have had a level of ignorance to just even the context of what that is. The amount of buy-in that it takes to have and to raise children, I wouldn't have known.
Right.
And the sort of vision that you have for sons and daughters to just looking forward into their life and what you hope for them, I wouldn't have been able to relate to. So,
No.
and then some of the concerns that you have, all of that would have just been foreign to me. So
Right.
that's a good observation, and it has totally expanded the value of the conversations I've had to have.
Sure. Sure. Well, we're excited to learn from you and the rest of your siblings as we have these conversations, because again, we see the world from our place, right? Where we are.
Absolutely.
I've had the benefit again of additional context because I've been working with clients for a long time, so I've seen it from their view, which is very helpful. But what we haven't had is a lot of conversations with their children.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
As far as how they're viewing what their parents are doing, how they're responding to it. I've seen parents do wonderful, amazing things for their children, and the children kind of receive it in a way that surprised me.
I know.
And so that's also, I think, going to be very hopefully helpful for the listeners to understand as they're saying, okay, how do we do things for our children? And wow, that didn't go at all like I had hoped it would, right? So maybe giving some context to what's happening there in the minds of their children.
Yeah.
And even hopefully help to make all of those things be smoother, more successful.
Yeah.
So we've had people asking me forever from a financial perspective, how do I transfer wealth to my children and not ruin them, right?
Yeah.
Not harm them.
Absolutely.
Not cause it to be a demotivator.
Yep.
Not cause it to be a curse in their life. And so that's a lot of what the content of this podcast is going to be. So we don't have all the answers by any means, but we've seen a lot of scenarios. We've seen some things done well. We've seen some things that haven't worked so well. So I think more than anything, we've learned a lot of the questions, and those are the questions that we're going to be talking about as we go through this series.
Yeah.
So our hope for you, for the listener, is that if this is something that's important to you, if your focus is building strong multi-generational families, and specifically our focus is how to use money as a tool in that process, right? So a lot of people have trained their children to be prudent with money. But how do you go even beyond that? How do you make the money a tool that strengthens relationships, that strengthens faith, and that strengthens ultimately the family for generations and generations? So that's our hope. That's what we're going to be working on. And if that's interesting to you, then we're really excited to have you continue along with us. Thanks for listening to the 10 Talent Life. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, we hope you'll take time to sit with it a little bit and consider what you might want to put in motion for your family while you still can. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you next time.